Welcome to the broadcast and welcome to the fruit basket, my dear old fruits. Wonderful to see you. I'm going to kick off with a message from Fido Xavier, who is a fellow basketeer, who happens to be an Emmy award-winning director, who happens to be a cult musician living in LA, who happens to have worked alongside Thomas Markle on General Hospital, which Fido directed for several years and worked alongside Thomas Markle Sr. for several years, and who happens to have reached out to me. Hello, Fido, my dear. Welcome, and thank you very much for the tip jar treat that you've also sent to me. I'm going to read out your message and your insight. River, massive fan here, probably the only YouTube channel I follow religiously. I'm flattered, my dear, thank you. I love it when you set people straight. Yeah, I think lots of people enjoy that. Lots of people enjoy when I get my knickers in a twist. Tommy was certainly a funny guy. He had a flop apartment across the street from the studio since we had very long hours during the heyday of the show. I started working at General Hospital in 2007, well after Megan's appearance, because Megan had a walk-on role at one point. She wasn't hired, it didn't impress anybody enough for them to hire her, so she had to go back to starletry, but she did make a brief appearance on General Hospital. I digress. However, Tommy would show us Megan's new headshots or report on her progress, and he was very supportive and proud. I was a director on the show, and Tommy lit the show. So we worked closely together, and he was a great craftsman. And this is a theme, isn't it, that we hear a lot. He was very much respected as a professional, as a diligent worker, and as somebody who was very passionate about his craft. That's something I'll never take away from him. When new management arrived around 2010, Tommy retired. Possibly this was gently suggested, and I lost touch with him, although I heard about his move to Mexico from his former lighting director partner, Vince. Naturally, we at General Hospital looked upon Megan as a homespun success. I was a cheerleader for her work on Suits, Deal or No Deal, and was of course so excited when she was to join the royal family. What a crazy small world, even though I never met her. Suffice it to say, Rachel went on to be an abysmal embarrassment and degrade America. Oh, I do love it. An abysmal embarrassment and degrade America, General Hospital and her father, Thomas Markle. Some people are truly their own worst enemies. To have the opportunity to join one of the most august institutions in the world, to be of service to the great British nation, and to squander such an opportunity through narcissistic borderline personality antics is a true shocker. I remain your loyal viewer, and should you ever come to LA, please let me know if I can be of assistance. Well, wasn't that very sweet of Fido to reach out as he did and give us that insight? And I do come to LA, my dear Fido. If you're a regular viewer, you might know that, because one of my very dearest friends lives there in Los Feliz. So I'm acquainted with Los Feliz really quite well. And I can see from where you live in Los Feliz that my friends only live a couple of streets away from you, my dear. That sort of area. I prefer to stay in Santa Monica because it's close to the Whole Foods. I need to be within walking distance of the Whole Foods there. It brings me great peace and great sanctuary. And there are better places to get coffee. That's one of the hardest things about LA, especially if you're not driving. If you are driving, you're stuck in traffic jams all day. And if you're not driving, then you have to rely on your trotters. And I love to walk, and I'm a very fast walker, and my trotters are used to trotting about. But you can't trot about LA. It's too big, too sprawling. There are no little neighbourhoods or green spaces of note. Oh, I spent hours and days trotting around. Your neighbourhood, my dear, I don't mean to disparage it, because there's lots of charm about it as well, and I know very well. And as you know, I lost my virginity in the ladies' loo, a bungalow, to an Eskimo. Perhaps you know him. But, so I've got a lot of things that I hold in great esteem in the area, but I find it very difficult. I would find it impossible to live there, my dear, but I know it very well. But Fido, as well as directing General Hospital, as well as having a very distinguished musical career and being much admired for his experimental style of music going back several decades and being quite an iconic figure on that scene. As well as that, you also directed Passions, you also directed Days of Our Lives. But what really impresses me, my dear, what really impresses me, and I've mentioned this soap opera before on the broadcast, is that you directed Sunset Beach. Oh, Sunset Beach. And I really got into it a few years ago. There were some reruns playing of it. I thought, what's this? Because I love to watch these sorts of nostalgic series from the past. This one popped up, Sunset Beach. I was addicted. I absolutely adored it. Do you like Sunset Beach, my dear fruits out there? With the divine-looking Eddie Cibrian, who was it he began dating? The girl up on the bars. Leanne Rimes. Before all of that drama. Eddie Cibrian. Oh, those dimples. Oh, you got to work with him. Leslie Ann Downs as Olivia. Leslie Ann Down, rather. And I knew her name because my mother had always been told throughout her life that she looks like Leslie Ann Down, and she does. If you want to know what my mum looks like, or did look like when she had longer hair, she wears it short now, but when it was long, she was always mistaken for Leslie Ann Down. And in fact, if you stick me in a brunette wig and cut in some bangs, I look a lot like Leslie Ann Down. Yes, I do. Something in the structure we've got going on there. And she was fabulous, but probably my favourite character was Sarah Buxton as Annie Richards. Oh, that evil bitch, Annie. Fabulous, with the big pout. Oh, I would love a role like that. I've got to tell you, I'm not hankering after a career in performance, but I would certainly put my prejudices aside for a role like that. I would love to play a saucy villain, a Bond villain. Barbara Broccoli, if you're watching, eat your heart out and, leave me a comment. But if Sunset Beach returns, my dear Fido, and they call you up to direct it again, it's my destiny. It's my destiny. Don't bother screen testing anybody else for the role of the villain of the piece, the bitch of the piece, because I will put them all to shame, from Joan Collins to Leslie Ann Down to Sarah Buxton. But what you've told us, my dear, certainly confirms that Thomas Markle, or Tommy as you call him, had a splendid reputation as a professional, a hard worker, a team player. Now, it's no secret I'm not a fan, and I told Fido this. I told you this. I'm not a fan of Thomas Markle at all. But that doesn't mean that I don't understand that there is a dual aspect to his personality. And I don't deny the fact that many people who have come across him and worked with him adore him. I just feel and know that there is a shadow side to his nature. I've seen the spite that he carries. I've seen the vulnerability that he may carry. But I've also seen the belligerent side to his nature that I don't care for. And also the lack of discernment when it comes to associations, whether that's Carl Larson, the likes of Carl Larson. I mean, the last person in the world you would want to associate yourself with. He does it, as do the other members of his family. So although there have been a few occasions when I could have been seduced into having sympathy for him, I'm afraid he's screwed it up through his own behaviour, his own decisions, and I can't say for sure that I wouldn't wash my hands of him either if he had behaved with such petulance and indiscretion, despite the support that he evidently gave to his daughter over very many years. But I appreciate the insight very much, and it certainly seems apparent that Meg's natural home is on set and on show, acting the part of Duchess, philanthropist, author, victim, queen. But royalty comes from the heart, not from the script and the clapperboard. I noticed this week that rumours were circulating regarding the king wanting Royal Lodge for Queen Camilla. Royal Lodge is where Prince Andrew currently resides, of course. And these rumours were circulating mainly thanks to a Richard Eden article in Mail Online, suggesting that he wants Royal Lodge for Camilla if she outlives him and becomes Queen Dowager in effect. That he would want Royal Lodge for her. Well, I thought that it sounded absurd, but I did reach out to a couple of people who are very much in the know, especially with regards to Queen Camilla. And I'm told that it's complete nonsense, this whole suggestion, that she would be earmarked for Royal Lodge or would even desire it at all. Royal Lodge is vast, a cavernous gaff, and the very idea of her swanning around in it is preposterous, and the rest of her family are very much independent and lead their lives away from the royal residences, unless they're visiting. And I'm told that the most likely outcome in the scenario of the Queen outliving the King is that she would simply return to Ray Mill, her beloved home at Ray Mill, full time. It's heaven on stilts there. It's heaven on stilts. And she enjoys her garden and her grandchildren there most of all. It's very silly. It's very silly. Now, at a stretch, I'm told that Clarence could still be available to her. Clarence House, or perhaps Highgrove, or one of the more minor residences that come under the King's portfolio. I guess we'll find out if the King dies. But speaking of the King, he was hobnobbing away at the Harmony Prize for the King's Foundation, and all the lovies were out in force, my dear, all the usual suspects, Eddie and Naomi, work supermodel, work. Rod Stewart was there with Penny, and the King told him that he had had treatment that very day. David Beckham was in the house yet again, and Rod Stewart teased Mr. Beckham, saying that he was delighted to have received his knighthood and that David's would be on the way shortly. But Mr. Beckham is old chums with the King now, isn't he, since they're meeting at Highgrove. And so all these great and good are lining up to be ambassadors for the King's Foundation. Isn't that such a punch to the gut for Harry and Meghan? This was at St. James's Palace, by the way, and it was ahead of the trooping that we've got coming up soon, haven't we? Tripping the colour, very, very soon. And the King presented new colours this week to number 9 and number 12 company, the Irish Guards at Windsor Castle. His Majesty is Colonel-in-Chief of the 7 Guards Regiments, the Household Division, and the colours form part of the Irish Guards' legacy. They're known as the Mix, aren't they, my dears? The Mix. And these represent those who have died and fought for the regiment. It was a tonic to see the regimental mascot, Seamus, the Irish wolfhound, as usual, and you can tell, can't you, that he's missing his dear friend, the Princess of Wales, Colonel of the regiment. And you might remember that the King's first official portrait by Jonathan Yeo that we discussed is inspired by the association with the Welsh Guards, hence the saturation of the red colouring. Well, it was attacked this week in a minor way. The painting was attacked by protesters, these were animal rights activists, at the Philip Mould Gallery, and they plastered the King's face with Wallace and Gromit character masks. But actually, this was more of a publicity stunt than anything too serious, so never fear, because the paintings were covered with glass, so nothing was damaged as far as I'm aware. So I'm not actually that mad at the whole affair. I mean, if you're going to do it, if you're going to protest, then that is the way to do it, without destroying everything in your wake, you know? Not destroying works of art. There are ways to do it peaceably, I suppose with humour, to get your point across. Okay, it's time for a comment, a rather haughty comment from somebody called L, who says, "Do you support everyone that went to Epstein Island? You sure do love to support Trump and Andy. Icky. Cry harder, dear. Cry harder. A boo-hoo. Yeah, we know where you want to go in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. because the next stop is always the island, just like all those little girls. It's not Trump derangement syndrome to dislike the disgusting, drooling Donald Trump, just like it's not racism to discuss the disgusting antics of Meghan. You're off your rocker river. Oh, cry harder, Elle. Sob harder, weep harder. Wring those tears out and see if I care. Well, my dear, Elle actually has a channel. I won't point to it directly, but she has a channel of her own. There's a few videos of stray cats that she seems to have befriended, and she seems to fancy herself as some sort of chanteuse. Move over, Lana Del Rey.
I have only one thing to do, and that's be the way that I am and then sink back into the ocean.
Move over, Taylor Swift. Elle is in the house.
Sink back into the ocean.
Actually, I thought it was Sissy Spacek when I first clapped eyes on her. But in response to your haughty comment that I should be at Mar-a-Lago, that's where I want to go. I would love to go to Mar-a-Lago. Never been to Mar-a-Lago. If anybody out there can get me in, I would love to go. I've heard what a barrel of laughs it is. Fantastic place. So I hear, get me in, get me in. But as for you intimating that I would be at home on Epstein's Island due to little girls, you're barking up the wrong tree, my dear. Little girls ain't my fancy. Large men are my fancy. So whatever fantasy you're getting off on, because you seem to be getting rather excited about this fantasy of yours, of me on Epstein Island. Whatever your fantasy is, my dear, whatever flames of ardour are burning down where the sun don't shine, extinguish it. Extinguish those thoughts, my dear. Although I did initially assume that you had Trump derangement syndrome, but you go on to say that both of the United States candidates wear diapers. You can see the outline on Trump's bottoms. Elle is not a fan of either Biden or Trump. Well, thank you for your footy contribution, I suppose. The Queen made her presence felt and known at a lovely royal gathering, including Alan Titchmarsh, yet again, the gardener extraordinaire. Yep, he popped up again, my dear, welcoming Queen Camilla to the Gardening Bohemia showcase, which centres on the Bloomsbury Group artists that we've discussed recently and their relationship with gardens. The Bloomsbury Group, or Bloomsbury Set, were that troupe of 20th century writers, philosophers and intellectuals, and actually the Queen's involvement with the curiosities of their gardens, the gardens of the Bloomsbury Set, sort of dovetails into an interest of mine, an ongoing interest of my own, because a very dear friend of mine oversaw the house and gardens of Virginia Woolf's summer home in St Ives, Talland House I think it's called. Yes, a friend of mine oversaw the house and gardens there, and they commissioned specialist gardeners with heritage training to develop the gardens there, inspired by Virginia Woolf's books and her gardens, because Virginia was one of the Bloomsbury Set, along with her sister, Vanessa Bell, the artist. And this exhibition focuses on both of them, Virginia and Vanessa, along with Vita Sackville-West, the garden designer and writer, and Lady Ottiline Morell, who was an arts patron. So I've seen firsthand how these gardens can be restored lovingly, poetically, with great historical accuracy, and inspired by the works of these people. Queen Camilla also met and chatted with the florist from the coronation, and she took part in a clay for dementia session, and she was able to inspect a 17th century tapestry that was recently acquired depicting gardens in spring. Christina Coates says, I love how you described where the wonderful Queen Camilla sits in the seasons. At 67 years old, I have no idea where I sit. Could you, dear River, say where us 60-year-olds Sit if you have a moment. Love to you now and always. Well, yes, as you may know, my dear, I split up everybody into the seasons, depending on their age, into blocks of 25 years. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. So at 67 years old, you are in your autumn season, because you are between 50 and 75 or thereabouts. And nature, of course, is cyclical. So after the winter season, it doesn't mean that the seasons just come to an abrupt end, my dear. If you're fortunate enough or cursed enough to live beyond 100, depending on your situation, 101, then you simply re-enter spring, my dear. It's a second childhood of sorts. It can be a very gay age of second childhood, second spring, second springtime. So there's always some season to look forward to, my dear, no matter where you are on the cycle. But at 67 years old, you are in your autumn season, and I divide each season up into the 12 months. So what I mean by that is that you are in the autumn season at 67, and you are round about, if I was to divide that season up into 12, you are round about the autumn-September month of that season, because you're around sort of 9/12 of the way through that season. So you're round about September. You're an autumn-September. So you're a double autumn. I don't mean to complicate it, my dear, but this is one of the juicy ways that I like to sprinkle a bit of magic and imagination over the seasons of life. You're a double autumn, an autumn-September, which means that you are all about, if I was to use my imagination, the harvest. Certainly the harvest, the golden, bountiful season of ripe fruits and vegetables, of festival, of harvest festival. This is you, my dear. You are right on it at 67 years old. You are right on it. You are harvest September, an autumn September. You are harvest personified, my dear, if you like to be inspired by the season and the month. Camilla, at 76 years old, is winter, very early winter, and she's a winter January because she's so early in it, so her month will be January. So I would say, using my imagination, that means she is fresh, but because she's January, she's introspective, possibly seeking comfort, because January can be bleak, can't it? Seeking comfort, enjoying the comfort of a warm hearth or fireplace, and curious about the months to come throughout that winter season, possibly in hibernation. Maybe part of her soul and spirit is in hibernation, but waiting in very early springtime of the winter season. Are you thoroughly confused? Let's turn to Prince William, who has been in Wales celebrating the Welsh seaweed industry. The glamour never ends, does it? The glamour never ends. In the seaweed industry, he was visiting Nopla, who we've spoken about on many occasions, the Earthshot winners who are achieving remarkable advances with their seaweed sustainable packaging. And at the Metropolitan University, His Royal Highness discussed innovation and new investment in the sector and met with a range of seaweed-savvy entrepreneurs who are using the marine plant supermaterial to create sustainable alternatives to single-use plastics. And he looked over the seaweed farming techniques, which are an untapped resource. There is much excitement surrounding this and the discoveries involving it. I keep expecting to see Daryl Hannah pop up, wagging her tail. The Prince made a private visit to MI6, the Secret Intelligence Service, and it was shrouded in secrecy. MI6 deals with foreign intelligence and protects the United Kingdom from risks abroad. But notification of this visit only appeared in court circulars after the fact. No location or additional detail was given. In 2019, William spent 3 weeks working with MI5, MI6 and GCHQ to learn how our intelligence agencies work. So he's very well briefed already. And the former head of MI5, Baroness Manningham Buller, has become the first woman in 675 years to be appointed the historic role of Chancellor of the Order of the Garter. by King Charles, who said he was graciously pleased to have made the appointment, and this appointment was made on the retirement of the Duke of Abercorn. And also Lord Ashton of Hyde became Master of the Horse, which also dates back centuries to King Edward III and is now a ceremonial role, but originally the Master of the Horse was responsible for the sovereign's horses, the carriages and the travel arrangements. And he will be present for the state occasions and the rides in Tripping the Colour, which we'll be seeing extremely shortly over the next few days. So we can look forward to catching up after Tripping the Colour, can't we, my dear? We can look forward to that. I look forward to your company, and I thank you for sharing it with me today here on the broadcast. Thank you very much for your time, your engagement, your juicy comments, and thank you if you sent a tip jar treat my way. It's sincerely appreciated. I'll see you next time, my dears. Ta-ra and toodle pip. Stay fruity and always on royal duty.